All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Allma Twitch channel. We're coming to you from StreamYard, so that's pretty cool. Today, we're going to talk about what happened with Facebook on the 4th of October. I'm Joshua Timberman. I work for Allma, and I'm joined by Pete, Mandi, and Jason. Why don't you all give yourselves an intro? Pete, start us off.
Hello, everyone. All one of you, and it's probably my mom. Thanks for watching, Mom. I am Pete Cheslock. I am the CPO of Allma, the C3PO of Allma, and I like boats. I like to talk about boats on LinkedIn and shit posting. So
excellent. Yeah, Mandi.
I'm Mandi Walls. I'm a DevOps advocate at PagerDuty, and yeah, we'll just go with that.
Okay.
Follow PagerDuty channels. PagerDuty.
Heck yeah. And Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Dixon. I'm loosely associated with events like Monitorama. I run the Monitoring Weekly newsletter, and I'm known to subtweet on Twitter as Security.
Excellent.
And he is our special guest.
Special guest, Jason Dixon.
Because honestly, Jason, I was kind of worried that you'd flake out on us. Like, let's be honest here.
I don't know if I'd take that for especially for Pete.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. So cool. Well, we've got lots of people here that can give us some hot takes. So what happened on Monday, October 4th in the social media land? Does anybody know? It's something to do with a like button.
There's a like button.
Or dislike button.
Yeah. The like button.
All the white supremacists on the internet were shut down.
Yeah. Aren't they all on a different platform now?
I don't know.
There's probably like a private, private Facebook group that they all hang out in. I don't really know. What was amazing is that there was obviously a Facebook outage, but it wasn't just Facebook, right? Because Facebook actually has purchased other social media places like Instagram. So like they really affected my ability to get smoked meat pictures. I was a little upset by that. And then WhatsApp too. And let's be honest, like WhatsApp is like, that's like critical infrastructure for like communications for
several countries.
Yeah. Billions of people.
Like most of Latin America and like places abroad. I think that it's widely used in Africa and the Middle East and other places. So so Facebook having an outage of their services is like super widespread and kind of horrifying, right? Like this is, like it's a bummer for all the people that wanted to post pictures of their cats or go get, pictures of their smoked meats, but not being able to do business through WhatsApp because that's your only communications medium.
Well, and a lot of small businesses that use Facebook as their only presence
that's their webpage.
That's their webpage. So
I know a gaming store that their whole presence is Facebook. They don't have their own website. They're just on a Facebook page.
Yeah.
So that's pretty severe. But also the interesting thing is the human factors of all the people that work at Facebook, like not being able to do their jobs, A, and B, the stressful incident that they had to work on.
It's hard to really kind of empathize. I mean, not hard to empathize, but it's hard to really understand what happened because it's such a walled garden, I guess, or such a black box, because like larger companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, I mean, you kind of understand what they're dealing with, but not really. It's when they're inventing their own protocols, designing their own hardware, things like that. It's such a different world that I think a lot of us just aren't simply used to being exposed to. It's funny for me, the perspective was kind of like two different ways. Like on the one hand, everybody that I know that's in the industry, engineers, everybody's either shit posting about it or hug opsing about it. Is that a word?
It totally is.
Yeah.
We'll make it one.
It is now.
Or two, people can't share their cat pictures or dog pictures, or I can't consume my latte art pictures. But yeah, it's kind of two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And one of the things that came out of the initial news of it was people trying to correlate it with the other, like there's a whistleblower event and people trying to correlate it that this is a cyber attack and somebody's trying to take down Facebook because they don't like it. It's like, no, not necessarily.
I didn't check out the our conspiracy on Reddit, but I have to imagine it was frothy, right, during this happened. But I guess ultimately, am I correct in the fact that this outage was a BGP related outage, right? Like the core of how you tell the world about your internet is here, right? Like your site is here, right? It was a BGP error.
Yeah, I read a report where it may have started actually on one of their core routers, like actual internal network that connects their data centers together and spread out from there to affect then their BGP and everything else on their broadcast. So, yeah,
it's kind of a fascinating case study in how you describe technology. You have routine conversations with people in your family or people that that you just encounter at Starbucks, whatever, and they're like, "What do you do?" And it's like, we take so much of what we do for granted because it's an onion, right? It's layered one thing on top of another, and it takes years of experience and failure and just accumulation to really understand all the aspects of what we do. And it's like, for someone who's had a background in DNS and networking and understands it, it's like we take so much this for granted that it seems simplistic. Yeah. But try peeling it apart and trying to explain it layer to somebody. It's wild. That's why we get terms like bridging gap protocol on Fox News.
Yeah.
It bridges the gap though, right? I mean,
it totally does. It's just a series of tubes, really. One of the fascinating things that I saw was the various analogies of people trying to explain what was happening.
Those are good.
My favorite actually is imagine that you're in your neighborhood and you all of a sudden all the roads to your neighborhood just disappeared. Your neighborhood's still there. You're still there, but there's no way to get to your neighborhood via a car. You can walk, but that they had to then walk to the routers to do things in their data center was, makes that analogy just so much better. Yes, BGP obviously is a burlesque group performance. Thank you, Mike.
That is wow, that's good.
Jeez.
That's a take.
Did anyone see any particular? So of course, what I find hilarious about this particular conversation is that we're we're gonna armchair quarterback the hell out of this outage, right? Because clearly we are all current operators of systems on the internet, right?
And we're using a system on the internet to broadcast on the internet to a different system on the internet.
Well, part of me wonders, frankly, and it was funny because I was having a conversation with Michael Gorsuch today. I don't know if anybody knows here. I think most of the people on the call know him. But you talk about how complicated systems that we build today are and how much specialists are part of the picture. Even within Facebook, I have to imagine they're trying to explain from team to team what's going on. How are we, how are we debugging it? How are we fixing it? How are we mitigating it? I can't even imagine. And then trying to translate to the outside world. It's fascinating.
Well, especially because they couldn't actually talk to each other. The stuff that has come out about how much of Facebook's corporate activity is completely hooked in to their core product. They don't outsource their proximity security. They don't pay for anything for chat or backup or anything else like that. So you take their stuff down, their DR is basically, well, we're never going to go down because that's our product. And your core competency is okay, you're going to run a bunch of stuff, but your backup plan is also that you're never going to go down. So
it's very well known, right, that Facebook kind of suffers from they call it the not invented here syndrome, right? Where
totally
you must kind of create everything yourself. And Jason and I, we had the pleasure of working together at a company that was in the DNS space, and the approach that they took to a lot of things was trying to be a little bit more tactical and well, we can't use, let's say, hosted GitHub because if we provide the DNS for hosted GitHub, right, they would think about those as their decision process. I don't know if Facebook really think about this, or is it no one could restart, no one could rebuild Facebook from scratch again, right? Because it's just evolved over so much time.
Yeah, it reminds me of back in the day, early on at Chef, when we were working with Dyn DNS and was it Xenos? on doing the game day events and like what would it take to bring back up an entire site. And we're doing the monitoring and the DNS and the config management stuff, and it's like there's so many more things that can go wrong today in the way that people build their infrastructures today than there was even, what was that, 11 years ago? Or the back in the days of ye old dial-up on AOL.
I never ran anything on that dial-up network in AOL.
I mean, I ran a BBS. It wasn't that a rite of passage in the 90s? It's like to,
oh hell yeah,
and then like phone numbers would start calling you, and then your parents would pick up instead of the modem. Like, Mom, hang up.
Right? Yeah. I totally got into Linux because I wanted to run a BBS software and game that only ran on Linux. And here we are.
So I'm curious. I am assuming everyone else in this call, besides myself, actually read the postmortem, read the root cause.
Oh yeah, we were going to do a dramatic reading.
Oh, that's right. I'm kind of.
I don't know if we have enough time to do a dramatic reading, but
yeah.
Well,
really
this is
that
where
long, is it?
I think this is where we move very close to the microphone.
oh, you have to talk
we start
very closely to the microphone.
Yeah, and we bring the NPR IR glass, and we
yes.
start with, now that our platforms are up and running as usual after yesterday's outage, I thought it would be worth sharing a little more detail about what happened and why. And most importantly,
But why, Pete? But why?
I'm kind of fixated on the action items. Were there any, like, did they acknowledge any particular action items? Like, we needed an extra battery for the angle grinder, or
yeah. So that's actually an interesting thing. When I was reading it, I was trying to discern the hidden language, right? Like they determined that the source issue was a single thing. And it's like, it wasn't just that you could push a config change, right? Like that's not there's not a single point of failure in this kind of thing. There's a cascading series of differing systems and layers that can go wrong. Like you were talking about earlier, Jason, where we have so many layers just with the internet itself, and then all the different ways that Facebook appears on people's devices and phones.
Well, and they're all in the same IP space. So like you drop that IP space off the internet, you're completely freaking hosed.
it's just gone. Like it's just
Right?
Just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a little upset. Granted, I have not been on Facebook in like a really long time. Like I just don't have the time for it anymore. But like Instagram, like I dig. I like there's no talking. I just pretty pictures, right? Like I just want to see cool pictures. That's all I really want. And it's amazing how you have a site that essentially like probably negatively influenced elections in multiple countries, and suddenly was just gone, and kind of people were like, all right, like cool. Like it didn't seem to, like people were like upset, and there was obviously like some after effects, but it was like, and nothing of value was lost.
That was kind of unfortunate. I mean, I was watching, I keep the Hug Ops hashtag up in one of my columns in TweetDeck, and like we've talked about this a couple of times before, Joshua, at least, about the folks that work there and the job that they do, and the whether you agree with Facebook's core mission to do whatever it is that they do or not. Like, there's still folks that are there. They're just trying to pay their rent and feed their families.
Yep. And pay for their health care. Because that's tied to your employer.
Exactly. And they had a really bad day on Monday. So
yeah, I'm kind of curious. I didn't hear anybody outside of Facebook or their advertisers that was really disappointed.
Well, we found out later that the outages list was jammed because of DNS lookups or something, right? So they're like they suspect that there were too many people who they had email addresses attached to things that were down. Like it would just jammed up the outages list. So like once everything cleared, there were like hundreds of messages that came through outages, and you're like, oh, people actually watching. Okay.
I saw a few anecdotes of like how the recovery of Facebook was affecting other vendors and services and stuff. Is there like a comprehensive list? Because I'd be very curious to see how impactful a recovery of Facebook is to the rest of the internet.
I don't know that anyone.
Yeah, talk about a thunder and herd problem,
right? The post that Cloudflare did was pretty good about how they saw it on their lookup servers, and that they thought they were having an issue, and then what it looked like after that was pretty good.
Yeah, we'll post the link in the chat. I'm just grabbing it now. That's I remember they did a similar post, because this is not the first time that there's been like a BGP fat finger. You know, there are these stories you see, they come up all the time, right? Like it's a very fragile, like, and there's humans involved into it, and you'll often hear about like, oh yeah, someone made a change and like rerouted everyone's traffic to like some random IP address in whatever, right? And just, and some people are like, oh, it's like a nation state actor. It's like, no, it's probably just like a hungover sysadmin. Like, let's be really honest here. But I remember, and I'm trying to remember what site it was that had dropped off the internet that Cloudflare actually had like a really
I think that was Fastly, wasn't it?
Was it? Was it? No, they had this great animated GIF of showing like the routes being, dropping off and just like disappearing. I wish I could remember it now.
Wasn't that back in May? Was it Salesforce maybe?
Oh no, this was like a few
years ago. Okay. Yeah. I remember seeing it, and like all this stuff just starts to blur together, right? Like these big public companies have something newsworthy happens, and so then it's all over the news everywhere, and everybody has to give their hot take, and here we are giving our hot takes.
Hey, one of the fun things about BGP is that Cisco actually broadcasts the updates, global updates, to Twitter, which is absolutely hysterical. So if you follow BGP stream on Twitter, you can actually see how some of these things flap from time to time. People fat finger their configurations, and somebody in Brazil is trying to take over somebody else's ASIN or whatever it is. And it just, it just kind of happens constantly that
that's amazing.
Updates going and crazy things going on in the global network. It's amazing the internet works at all.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, my first job ever was at an internet service provider in Michigan, and we had, sites and internet vendors that we worked with and things like that. And I remember anytime we'd go to make like any sort of network change, like it was a person like telnets, not even SSH, like telnets to like this border router or whatever, and starts whacking commands in there, and just like it all happens live, right?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how much that world has really improved, but all I remember is like the stress levels being high every time we did one of those things for very obvious reasons, right? It's I'm gonna reboot a server, and you send that ping out, and you're like, yep, I just need like, okay, like request timeout. Come on back. Come on back.
Yeah. My favorite was in the early days of EC2 was, rebooting an EC2 instance and then pinging the IP, and then it never comes back, because when it came back, that instance came back up, it got a different IP. That was fun.
That's the worst too, because it's like up, but like, where is it?
Where is it? You're like back into the console and trying to figure out where it went.
Well, so the one thing that I did see a lot of, armchair quarterbacking on was around the concept of a side, what is it called? Losing it. Oh yeah, out of band network, right? Mm-hmm. So like you obviously have your like primary network that like customer requests are coming into, and then you have your out of band network that like you do all this stuff on, right? And does anyone actually know kind of like if like did Facebook not have that? Was that part of this outage impacted as well?
It's all on the shared infrastructure.
Yeah, there was something alluded to in the in their report from the other day. Was it yesterday that they posted the more details post? And they said that there were a mix of systems. They have like the huge data center where all the compute for Facebook.com is. And then they have smaller data centers that are co-located around that are like their private network kind of thing. So part of the issue, of course, being that all that shared infrastructure runs all that shared infrastructure. So you've got, this inception thing going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something I remember from the working at Dine days of just like, yeah, like what do you actually need to bring a thing back up again? And it's like that thought exercise. I think, Joshua, you mentioned it about like Twitter is like, if you turned off Twitter, could you start it back up again?
Right.
It's like the bootstrapping problem, and again, this is definitely not the first outage that's happened with, but I'm even remembering some of these other ones where it was like, maybe it was a GitHub outage that happened years ago. Jason, you might remember where it was like the they needed the chatbot to work to bring up the thing, but the chat, like the back end infrastructure for the chatbot wasn't running,
Right,
because it, didn't exist or whatever, was turned off.
Yeah, in the years before I joined AOL, there was a horror story as part of the lore that one of the DC data centers had gone offline, and they had to like go in and reboot at that time a bunch of Sun systems, and then wait for them all, of course, to post. So like you're going gray while that's happening. But they basically had everybody who lived close by come to the data center and reboot all the rows. Because why wouldn't you? Like, okay.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been inside a data center in. I don't even know.
Well, yeah.
I don't remember the last time.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to remember the last data center I was probably in. Aughts, yeah, mid-aughts.
I think it was 2008. It was 2009 because I was in Seattle for the launch of the first release of Chef. Like the initial like, here we are, we're ops code. We made Chef. Here you go. But I went to a data center there on that trip to do something for one of the HJK consulting customers. Poor Scott has been in the data center within the last 2 years.
Yeah,
so,
sorry, buddy. I feel for you, man.
I don't know. There was definitely a soothing part of working in a data center. You're like, get the punch down tool and you're like punching down. You got the headphones on. You get ka-chunk, as you're moving along, and some of that I feel like
that click was really satisfying. Like when it had that spring back, that was so good.
Extremely satisfying. I think that's what made it so enjoyable. And then obviously like the downsides being is like all of the rack nuts, and if you had like a really bad, I was like the HP servers with the really crappy rack rails before they were good, and like you have to screw in the rack rails, they just didn't automatically go in, and now my fingers are all bleeding and I can't do anything. Like,
bringing back some very bad memories for me, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Oh my goodness.
I was at a Chef customer up your way, Pete, in the Boston area, and they happened to have been in what was a Sun location, right? So the customer, and they had a bunch of old gear sitting there. It was like going back in history. They just had like this big glass room with some kind of test lab or whatever. So it says raised floor or whatever, and a bunch of old Sun cages in there. And I'm like, oh wow.
Was it like, did any of it still work? That's like pretty fascinating.
It had blinking lights on, but like, did it ever really work? It just, yeah.
Yeah, to your point, for Sun servers, they're either like booting or about to reboot, right? Like there's, in a post state, and you're just like, please, dear God, come back online.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the pleasure of running some Sun stuff at like, again, mid-aughts, and they were like appliances. We would send Sun servers. They were mail. If you imagine like not Barracuda, it was a different company, but like a Barracuda box, right? You'd put in your whatever.
Oh, sure. And
they were just Sun boxes, right? And you shoved them out there, and the number of hard drives that would die on those things was just comical. And we would have to like walk the remote hands, but not like a remote hands who like knows what a data center is. It's like this box is literally in someone's like cleaning room closet, and you're like, yeah, all right, like the left one, my left or your left, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like the left hard drive, like that's the one, there's nothing good about any of that stuff.
No.
I think one of the things that I was pretty fascinated by is how they actually talked about how like, we've done all this work to like harden our systems and try to prevent unauthorized access. And it was all of that work that kind of slowed us down. And it kind of leads into like, was it confirmed that the angle grinder was false? Because I want it to be true so bad.
So that's the funny thing about the write-up, because there is a line in there where it says that they had to activate the secure access protocols. And I'm thinking, did they use the Bosch security protocol or the DeWalt security protocol?
It's Cobalt. So I have a visual aid for folks today. So in case you're questioning, what kind of tools you need to break into your data center, I want to help you out. So
tools are important.
Important. You want the right tool for the job. So this is actually a miniature circular saw. It's very similar in size to an angle grinder.
Why did you just grab, where did that come from that it was sitting right next to you?
She's doing some work on her office.
No, it was in my garage, and I went out to get it when we decided to do this today, and I thought this would be hilarious. So
it is.
So the difference between a circular saw like this and an angle grinder is the angle of the blade that's going to go in it. So a circular saw is meant to be done horizontally, so it's going to help you saw things horizontally. An angle grinder, instead of being mounted this way, is mounted off the front. So that helps you get more leverage into your data center cage when you need to saw through your door or your lock or whatever it is. I just wanted to help people out there get the right tool when you're breaking into your data center.
I want to believe that this is part of PagerDuty's official disaster recovery process. I truly do.
There's a document, they have a BC, business continuity disaster recovery document that exists somewhere.
Somebody should at this point. This should be a lesson learned for everyone.
Seriously,
every data center should now be secure access, angle grinders on site.
Mm-hmm. But the angle grinders have to be locked up with a special lock that does not use anything that touches the internet.
Yes,
exactly. the old master lock padlock with a physical key. Otherwise you need what, bolt cutters to get through the lock to get to the angle grinder to get to the data center.
The whole story is amazing. That's my favorite part, honestly, is they're so secure. They have locked themselves out of absolutely everything about their day-to-day jobs and their emergency response because everything is so tightly coupled.
Yeah.
Do you think that in one of the parts of this line, in one of the kind of paragraphs of the RCA, they had said, we faced two large obstacles. First, it was not possible to access our data centers through normal means because the networks were down. Okay, great. And second, the total loss of DNS broke many of the internal tools we normally use to investigate and resolve outages like this. Obviously, do you think they will have this self-reckoning that maybe 100% ownership of everything is not the best idea? I think everyone is always decrying vendor lock-in and, oh God, we can't depend on Amazon solely. But here is the exact opposite. Facebook depends on no one but Facebook. And that didn't help them here. Right. Yeah. So it's obviously they're somewhere in the middle, but I'm super curious if this will cause any sort of internal discussion of maybe we've dialed this thing too far to the side,
maybe they'll just create a second, DNS authority that they use.
They'll put a daughter network off somewhere.
I think if anything moves in that direction, it's not going to be that. It's going to be the fact that the entire internet went on Twitter to discuss it and dissect it. If Twitter goes down, where are we going to go for our memes and our angle grinder,
right?
Whatever's.
It's not going to be Instagram.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Discord, right? Into one of the tens of thousands of Discords. That's where.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Twitch chat. Yes, of course.
Yeah. That's right. Come here to all your news. Emergency response starts on the Allma Twitch channel.
That's exactly. Right. Just come here. Yep.
Yeah.
Either that or email, right? Come and just email me when Facebook is down, and then.
Right.
I don't know what I would do with that information, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Too true.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Was it so? The other thing too that I was very confused by is obviously maybe not obviously, but don't they have global multiple locations and data centers and CDN? There's just so much at play here. Obviously, maybe this all really truly does come down to the fact that sure, they've got places sites all over the place, but the second that you stop announcing your IPs, because of course you own these IPs and they don't exist anywhere else, everything else is not going to work, right?
Yeah, I kind of think that's probably what they're going on. They may be large enough that they're running BGP inside their networks.
They probably are. Well,
on their cores.
I want to say that I read something recently, or maybe it was a while ago, and I think it was recently, that they use BGP internally for things that BGP wasn't necessarily designed to do because they're Facebook and they can.
Well, yeah, because are they still pushing all their files out via torrents or whatever internally to deploy all their software?
Probably. Yeah. That was a big thing for a while.
I don't think that's that unique. I think we even did that at Dyn.
Absolutely.
Stuff, The torrent thing is big enough that I remember I was working with Seth Chisholmore at Chef on writing a BitTorrent cookbook to do BitTorrent setup to have it automatically do BitTorrenting things for like some broadcast company of some sort, Turner or Fox or something like that.
Being able to push like only bits, efficiently, right, out to like these remote sites. That was at least in the Dyn scenario. It's like, out to some site where the connectivity was very dodgy or questionable, right? Makes a ton of sense to do that.
I think what's interesting about this is like, and I rant about the complexity of cloud primitives and how we build things today. It wasn't really the complexity of how we build systems today that brought them down. It was like these, I don't want to say it's inceptive, but it's like, these are very simplistic designed protocols, but like they're foundational. Like, and when you do something wrong at that, at that top level, aspect, it's how do you plan for that? Like when you think that all these teams understand what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, right? Because they're doing, they've got operating systems running on hardware in data centers. They're not using Docker containers in a Kubernetes cluster running on EKS in Amazon, who runs their own data centers off somewhere else on, that are running on EC2 instances that are running on blah, blah, blah. Like that, you don't have the layer of soup there. Facebook is running like the application on a OS that's right next to, the actual operating system that runs the hardware. So like they're not doing these multi-layers of complexity. So that they've got the dependency problem of having their whole network tied together is, makes it an interesting mess.
Yeah.
Sorry, my heart skipped a beat there when somebody suggested that the BGP service was controlled by Kubernetes.
Someone
that's a take.
There is someone out. There's someone out there that
trying to do that,
either trying to do it or doing it now.
Oh Lord, love them.
It's just. There's a Helm chart for BGP.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm gonna need a YAML to iOS conversion.
Oh no. Are they even running dedicated network gear on those networks though? Like, because for a while they're building all those.
Yeah, like it's their own network, right? Like it's their own routers. Like again, again, Facebook fashion. Like this is their own networking gear that they've designed and built, right? Like they're not using off the shelf like.
They're not running Cisco's. They're running Facebook network, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are some thought leaders in the space that can confirm that for us. Yeah. Sweet.
They totally are.
Totally are.
We'll just go with Twitch chat.
Yeah. Twitch chat is
authoritative. It's authoritative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so again, in the RCA, after they use the secure access protocols, which again,
angle grinder.
Let's just say it. It's an angle grinder. They did it. So they were like, we could bring everything back up. Great. Awesome. Like turn on the servers, fire it up. Right. But they were like, the problem's not over. We know that turning on all the services at once could potentially cause a new round of crashes due to a surge in traffic. Right. Like, so now we're talking the thundering herd.
Yep.
It's like everyone's been refreshing Facebook for hours. And also all of the sites that have the Facebook buttons on it that everyone's on, like I couldn't even imagine what that would look like. But what was really cool to hear about is that they were like individual data centers were reporting dips in power usage in the range of tens of megawatts.
Right.
And suddenly reversing such a dip in power consumption could put everything from electrical systems to caches at risk. Yeah. And so just wrap your brain around that for a minute, that like we think about like, oh God, too many people are going to come and hit my site and the site will go down. And they're thinking like, no. If too many people come to our site, like we could have fires happen, like things will catch on fire.
Yeah, I looked it up. I was curious. Okay, what does an average home use in terms of power? And it's about 30 kilowatt hours per day.
I can't. I was told there would be no math.
I'm not gonna do the math. I'm just gonna say, there's kilowatt and then there's megawatt and they're bigger, and then you don't want to get into gigawatts because then you
need 1.21 of those.
Like time travel happens and
thank you there. What's wrong with math?
What's wrong with math? I have computers to do math for me.
Exactly.
It's too hard to figure out. So then they talked about their air quote storm drills.
Yeah.
And
also known as game days or DR tests.
Like a little bit of a game day, right? So when I first read this, I assumed they meant like a storm, like a hurricane, but I don't think that was the case. Like
I think they mean a storm of users.
Like a storm of users? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Seems like it.
Yeah, so they talked about this storm exercise, which would make sense. Like, you know, you have to assume that they're doing these things, right? You want to know, like, when you have infinite money like Facebook and not being online causes stress to your infinite money, you know, pipe, you kind of want to make sure that it's always operating. And so it would obviously make sense that they would kill services, data centers, regions, et cetera. They would test all of these scenarios.
Yeah.
And so they were like, yeah, it's like, so we were pretty confident that, like, you know, we could bring things online and manage these loads. They never really kind of talked about like how they do that, right? Like, I don't know, is it like just like you're just shedding traffic, like only taking X number of requests? I don't know if anyone's ever had to deal with that type of, like, you know, how do you solve a thundering herd problem?
I mean, you can build circuit breakers in there, just redirect stuff to dev null. I mean, that's not that.
I mean, I hear our friends over at Gremlin might know a couple things about this.
You can join the PagerDuty Twitch stream directly after this. We're gonna talk about chaos engineering, but no, like there are, you know, red button ways to deal with this. So a couple of the things that we used to do with this at AOL is if one data center got too hot and we need to bleed traffic off, you start pulling back some of those metrics on your DNS broadcast. That's one way. The other thing that you could do was on our edge services, we were using NetScalers at the time. We could actually push traffic to a backup server, which was HTTPD with a static site on it. So like we'd be caching something there and start to bleed things off that way. I don't actually know what all Facebook does with all of theirs. I'm not even sure how much of that stuff that you see on your regular page has been devolved into different services because it was a monolith for so long. But
yeah, that's a really good point too, is that like there's obviously like probably millions of different services that are involved in all of this. To make it all work. And of course, like they even said, like, we've never previously ran a storm that simulated a global backbone being taken offline because like, you know, no one, if any like executive was like, we should test if literally all of Facebook goes away.
Oh, you know there is now.
Yeah, that's part of the plan. That's got to be part of the plan.
Yeah, Zuck took a little break smoking them meats, and he's asking some tough questions now, right? He put that sweet baby Rays aside, and he's walking around wondering what's going on, right?
Yeah.
You know, but totally. I mean, they were like, yeah, we're looking to ways to simulate this in the future, which, like, like probably should. You know,
hey man, if you're gonna like dev null your authoritative DNS servers, like there's a start, because that's how everybody else saw what was going on with you. So.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah, it is fascinating.
It's an exciting day on the internet.
I know. It's so exciting. I just like and I feel like I was actually trying to find them in preparation for this conversation that like the real comments were like buried in a Reddit like comment thread.
Yes.
And the one that I saw, which again, like the reality of all of these is like super questionable. But one of them was basically like, you know, we basically like tested, like we didn't test a thing that like we didn't test a change to a thing that we, you know, didn't know how to test or didn't want to test or whatever. It was just basically like straight up cowboy sysadmining. Essentially, it was like, we're just gonna like do this thing. It's probably fine. Is essentially their strategy, I think.
Speaking of downtime, is NPM still down?
Oh gosh,
that's a great question. I forgot about that.
Outage. Yeah.
They are.
Is it a day of the week that ends in Y?
Well, I saw some post yesterday. It was like October's going to be your internet outage or advent calendar this year, which I thought was pretty brilliant. Like, it kind of seems that way.
It's a spooky month, right?
It's super spoopy.
Spooky.
Yeah. Kieran Dave on Twitter had an interesting thread on what this kind of outage looks like from the perspective of companies that run huge data centers. Because most of us who are we're at startups or smaller companies that are running on the cloud, like we don't have to think about BGP or anything else. And so Kieran Dave's thread was pretty interesting look at all of that. So I wanted to say that because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a list of links and resources, and we're going to gonna post this somewhere. I'm not sure where yet, but probably in our Discord, at least, and then we can share it out. Because we don't really have a blog that we're doing like blogging content on, do we?
No, we're not blogging, but you can join our Discord for
You can totally join our Discord.
Raw, unfiltered hot takes.
Yes.
Basically.
We'll have to get some raw, unfiltered hot takes in there, but yeah, my plan is to put together something that we can share in there.
Oh yeah, there. Historical. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your handle. Posted the networking stuff that Facebook had published in May, which is interesting.
There's a link to our Discord, and then
centers.
here's that data center engineering.
Yeah.
Because everybody's just gonna read this off the stream and type it into their browser.
Well, yeah, and like, and we all need to know all the details of Facebook's BGP implementation. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, that is literally something like I got as far into networking as like got my CCNA, right? That's like the learn how to subnet IPv4 subnetting. When they were like, the next version was like learn how to subnet IPv6. I was like, yeah, I'm a head out. Like, I'm good.
Wait, you went straight from that to IPv6? No cider for you?
It was like the CCNA when I took it was, let's say, I don't know, 2008 maybe, and the test at the time didn't include any IPv6 related stuff. It was only IPv4, so like you could subnet in your head basically, and it was great. And then it got harder, and I'm like, I'm good. Like, I got this thing for like 3 years, and then like I joined a startup that was like on AWS in like 2009 or whatever, and I'm like, who needs networking anymore? Like, right?
That's right.
Yeah, we're good.
Outsource that to somebody else.
Yeah, just I was like, I'm on AWS. This was like before VPC, so it was like, yeah, everything just has a public IP. Who cares, right?
Sure, why not,
like,
man?
Yeah,
there's
plenty of IPs out there.
Yeah, there's definitely no global shortage in IPv4 whatsoever. So just put every one of those Elasticsearch servers right on the public internet. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, and I remember Facebook is the reason why Chef did a lot of work on IPv6 implementation because Facebook uses IPv6 for all their internal networking.
Yeah, actually, I forgot. Facebook, was it Facebook that used Chef like that?
Yeah.
I know Netflix did, right? They like, and there was a time that they had like, I guess, built servers with Chef or whatever. But yeah, I guess I forgot that Facebook did it.
Yeah,
there was talk at a ChefConf about it.
Yeah, Phil Dibowitz did a great talk at ChefConf a few years ago about the ways that they use it, and it's an interesting thing because it's like all these things that Facebook engineering shares is designed to solve problems that only Facebook's scale will run into.
Yeah,
and so like they don't use certain features of the Chef server that are problematic at large scale, like the search endpoints, because it's too slow.
Yeah,
and so. Whereas Chef is telling people use search, it's the greatest thing. It's like one of the coolest features of Chef. But then, then people are like, but Phil said don't use it. It's like, okay, you're not Facebook. You don't have Facebook's problems. So
you could take every other customer of Chef and combine them all and not get to Facebook's.
I wonder how much of our audience actually identifies with a lot of these problems because we're kind of starting to get into a generation now that's never dealt with like data centers and traditional servers. Like everything's cloud components, cloud this, and even within Facebook, I'm sure larger companies like that, they're abstracting things out to look like cloud primitives, I assume. But like honestly, like we're talking about stuff. I mean, not to sound like we're aged. I mean, but this technology is still valid, but it's not something that I think a lot of engineers come up with.
Yeah, it's truly turned into a utility. Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to think about power. You just go over to the light switch and you turn your light on, and you didn't even have to think about the wiring that goes behind the wall out to the whole power grid and the megawatts that Facebook is going to drain off of that when they come back online.
I love this quote. I've got 99 problems, but BGP ain't one.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
2,000 nodes at Columbia Sportswear is pretty significant for retail, but that's not a hot row at Facebook.
I know. Yeah. I'm trying to remember some of the numbers of scale that you would kind of hear. I mean, it's like it's like measured in the millions. I mean, I feel like didn't Phil, when he gave that talk, which was a lifetime ago, like they were in like millions of physical, I don't know, remember the term, it was millions of cores, like one of those abstract.
It's a little abstract. The nearest thing you get to a number of servers with Facebook is that they operate multiple data centers in every continent, I think, but Antarctica, maybe there now too. But they operate in multiple continents, multiple data centers in multiple regions within those continents, and they have tens of thousands of clusters that they bring up with Chef is what he was talking about back then. So each one of those, like tens and tens and tens of thousands. And I think that there was something that was on Twitter that said something like millions of systems running in each data center. Maybe that was in their postmortem doc. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I mean, you really nailed it, which is how often you see it's like the classic like premature optimization. And honestly, like we all see it right with Kubernetes. Like there's a whole bunch of people that are like, yeah, like we totally need Kubernetes. It's like, well, like, do you? Because it was kind of designed for, Google to replace their Borg and didn't replace Borg. So like it didn't even work for Google. So, but yeah, it's
a slippery slope here before I start ranting on why things don't look like Heroku.
Well, that is a whole separate discussion, Mr. Dixon, which is why is everyone trying to rebuild Heroku badly? We'll save that for a later one because I very much want to get some very, very spicy hot takes from Jason on that one.
Is that spicy like Carolina barbecue spicy or like Texas barbecue spicy?
Well, speaking of barbecue sauces, the one that you all should try is Alabama white sauce, which is fantastic. You put it on poultry, and I will not like it's mayonnaise. Okay. It's mayo. It's a mayo based barbecue sauce, but you put that on some smoked chicken or smoked turkey and it will change your life.
That's a take. I'm not going to call it a hot take, but that's a take.
I found it on a site called Chili Pepper Madness, which shouldn't be leading me in the wrong direction here. I don't know.
That's not the wrong direction at all. That's exactly where you want to go.
So.
Well, as long as the website has the recipe gives me a long drawn out story about I don't like any types of hot sauces, but I really like this, I need the story behind it.
There's 1,000 words of setup and then half a page of recipe. So we're in the right track here. We've got mayonnaise, apple cider vinegar, brown mustard, brown sugar, horseradish, lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce, hot sauce, garlic powder, onion powder, cayenne, and black pepper to taste.
I'm telling you, that's just I want it all. Yeah.
Just inject it right into your veins.
Exactly. Just like pour it in a glass. It's fine. Make a little, we're talking about coffee before we started, right? So like make a little latte with like Alabama white sauce, right? Sounds
that's not a latte I want to enjoy. I'm not gonna enjoy that one.
Come on, don't.
Interesting question in the chat though. Like, should any company only have their DNS run on their own boxes on their own network and nowhere else? What do you think about that?
Ooh, I love this question.
I know my thoughts on
it. I don't know. I kind of like DN Simple running my DNS for me personally, but I know that that's not necessarily the take that a business is going to make on that.
So for a long time, I would run. So I was like many people, I feel like Dyn DNS user, especially like Dyn's like the dynamic DNS, right? I want to get back to my,
your home router,
my home router, right? To do whatever I would do.
Log into your Samba server when you're in a hotel.
Yeah, and
because you have to print to something at home. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just to prove that I could, right? And then later on in life, it was like when Route 53 came out, like I was just like, I'm already on Amazon. Like I'm already trusting them with pretty much everything. So one more thing, and it's like 50 cents per domain. Like great, like you take it, have fun. And then honestly, I only recently shifted to Netlify's DNS as part of moving my site to Netlify because it was free.
Yeah.
And I was getting actually a little annoyed that every domain was costing me 50 cents when like the requests were like a penny each on Amazon. And I'm like, this is kind of like highway robbery here.
I think that says more about your problem with buying DNS, buying domains.
That's true.
Than anything else.
How many domains do you own, Pete?
Well, when I could get them for $0, quite a few.
when you work for a DNS provider.
How many permutations of Pete'sMeats.tld do you have?
All of them.
I would say thank goodness I did not work for a domain registrar when like the explosion in vanity, the GTLD, the new top level domains came out. It would have been disastrous, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer this question, that I would say is that, you probably don't want to run your own DNS. There should be a .ptld. I agree. Thank you.
There's probably a .meet TLD.
We're gonna make it happen. But like I am really under the belief that like you probably don't want to be running your own DNS unless you're actually a DNS provider. Right? Like it's just there are experts in that, and it's way more complicated than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a place you want to outsource. Now, one thing I did see, again, at certain scale, if your SLA really requires, is like maybe you actually have a couple of DNS providers. And that is actually probably a smart move. Like you probably don't want to put everything on Route 53. Maybe you actually want to have it split across vendors. It's the same way people do this for CDNs, right? A lot of people at certain scale will run multiple CDNs.
Yes.
Yep.
That I feel like is the smart move.
Totally.
We were talking about utility earlier. Like part of these becoming utilities and kind of being commoditized is that it is super easy then to connect up multiple providers and have your own sort of backup plan and failover stuff across different vendors. And I think especially for DNS at that point, like, yeah, you want 2, maybe 3 that you're hooking up. So
that's an interesting aspect of this outage is like that everything is tied into that one, failure point where it's like, like I said, it's kind of the dark secret of CDN. Like, I'm stressing out because of my Fastly stock, but it's like, if these investors knew, like every big company out there that's worth putting their stuff on a CDN, they're diversifying across all the different CDN providers. So nobody's talking about it, but everybody's doing it.
Yeah. I mean, you putting all your eggs in one basket, right, at the edge seems extremely risky. And it seems to make the most sense to be able to do that. It's kind of like, it's fascinating to see. It's like, will there be yet another CDN that comes out? It's almost like car websites, right? Like the places you can buy a car website, like new ones can come out and they'll become extremely successful because dealers need to move inventory. So they'll list it on like the 12th site or the 13th site that comes out. Kind of felt that way in the last few years with all like, a lot of, last 10 years or so with the CDN providers. It's like, yeah, like we should be on all of these providers. Wow, this was great. I know we're kind of coming up to the top of the hour.
I was just typing some furious notes. So, so thank you everybody who joined the stream to listen in to our pontifications and jive talk. And thank you, Mandi and Jason, for joining us. Can you let us know where people can find you on the internet? Mandi?
I'm LNXCHK everywhere except like Snapchat and TikTok because I'm too old for that stuff. And you can also find me on the PagerDuty Twitch channels. Actually, in 5 minutes.
I was gonna say, when can they find you?
Yeah,
I'm talking to Gremlin. So Julie Gunderson from Gremlin is joining me at 5:00 Eastern. We're going to talk about chaos engineering and incident response, and it'll be a good time.
Excellent. And Jason?
Hey, you can find me at Twitter at Obfuscurity, OBFUSCURITY.
Excellent.
And
well, thank you so much.
I would still like you. People don't know. You can go to monitoring.love, right? Because if you are into monitoring, or as the cool kids call it nowadays, observability, then you should check out that site. I did the dramatic reading. I read that first paragraph.
A little bit of it. Yeah.
I did. We'll do it. Yeah, sorry. I did promise it, and I did not deliver, and so I deserve the shade for that.
We'll publicly shame you on Twitter, Pete.
Please do.
All right. Well, cool. Thank you so much, everybody. Pete and I are going to make this kind of thing regular. We're gonna set up a schedule, and we're gonna jump on here. We'll invite some other folks on to chat with us about whatever may have happened that week, or maybe we'll just talk about barbecue. You never know. It's probably going to be about barbecue. I think we're going to work that into every single one of these. And also on the fourth Wednesday of every month, we at Allma host a meetup on Zoom called Disruptions and Discoveries. You can register over on our website, allma.io/DD. That's ALLMA.io/DD.
It's a lot of fun. You should join us.
It is. It's super fun.
It's cathartic. We share stories.
It's DevOps group therapy.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank y'all. And we'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. See you.